So YouTube recommended me this video from Gamingbolt, 5 most disappointing Resident Evil games of all time. I'm curious as to what their 5 most disappointing games are, or Resident Evil games are. Here's the thing about something like this. These kind of videos, they're all subjective because they're opinion based, right? They're not, there's no fact behind these type of videos or anything like that. Because I mean, if you're going to talk about most disappointing Resident Evil games, you're going to point out sales, you're going to point out stuff like this. So typically these type of videos are opinionated. So we're gonna take a look at this, and you know, not to like disprove anything, but you know, just to see what their opinions are as to like what the 5 most disappointing Resident Evil games are. I want to know. Here's a question for you guys. I want to know what your top 5 most disappointing Resident Evil games are. I'll tell you mine once the video's done, but we're gonna take a look at this, and yeah, let's see. What worries me is that for the thumbnail they had Resident Evil 3 Remake on there. So let's see this possible train wreck. Oh, hold on, the audio's not playing. Wait. Why is the audio not playing for you guys? Hold on. All right, I think I can fix it.
If a franchise has been running for as long as 2.5 decades, it's bound to have a few missteps here and there.
That's true.
The celebrated survival horror series Resident Evil is definitely one of the biggest and most beloved video game properties out there.
Oh no, why are you showing 0?
Legacy, but even it has not been immune to.
Why are you showing 0?
From the downright terrible to the decent.
RE6, I can agree with that one if that's on the list.
Few games over the years that have, to varying extents, failed to live up to expectations. In this feature, we're going to talk about the ones that stick out in memory the most.
I think if you already showed your hand, like you're showing a lot of RE0, RE6, RE3 Remake.
Consider subscribing and enable all notifications by clicking the bell icon.
So, yeah.
Let's begin. Resident Evil.
Yeah, hold on. You're putting Resident Evil 0 in there as one of the most disappointing Resident Evil games? No, I'm sorry. Resident Evil 0 was not a disappointment. I know, again, I said that a lot of this is opinionated. I like it. There's no real facts behind it. But Resident Evil 0 is one of the better Resident Evil games. I'm being hands-on, like honest with you guys. I'm not a huge Resident Evil 0 fan, but Resident Evil 0 is one of the better Resident Evil games. I can name a bunch more to call out before you even get to Resident Evil 0. Like, have you not played Resident Evil Survivor? Have you not played what is it? Oh, I can't think off the top of my head. Gun Survivor 2, like Umbrella Chronicles. Like, as much as I like Umbrella Chronicles and Darkside Chronicles, I would put those on the list before I put RE0. Just because RE0 did a lot of good things to make the game difficult. Like, a lot of people even consider RE0 to be one of the more difficult Resident Evil games. Anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's actually watch his reasons.
You and your friends no longer amuse me. Good riddance. Now nothing will stop me from getting my revenge.
Resident Evil 0 came at a time when the series fixed cameras and
okay, he's playing on PC.
Was beginning to lose steam. As it was, people were beginning to grow tired of the series formula. And though Resident Evil 0 tried to spice things up with new ideas, sadly it did not do a very good job. The game is certainly not without its merits. Several aspects of its story are crucial to Resident Evil lore. The atmosphere is excellent, and it does retain many of the strength and level design that classic RE games boasted.
It does.
It looked spectacular when
it does.
But Resident Evil 0 is also riddled with misguided experimentation. Billy Cohen plays a crucial role in the game, and not just in the story. He significantly changes the gameplay as well.
He does.
To freely switch between him and Rebecca as the 2 playable protagonists and removing item boxes entirely, Resident Evil 0 ends up almost forcing excessive backtracking down players' throats. Item and inventory management has always been a core pillar of the franchise, but here, it's taken to frustrating lengths. It doesn't help that Billy himself is not a very good character, or that even the game's main villain, James Marcus, is so ridiculously over the top and caricatured in his portrayal that it's hard to take him seriously.
Have you not played RE4? Like, You're going to complain that the main villain is over the top and ridiculous. Have you not played RE4 or RE5? Like, not saying that Wesker's over the top and ridiculous, but the rest of the villain cast is ridiculous in RE5. And in RE4, they're all ridiculous and campy. From Leon's dialogue to everybody else, it is one of the, like, it's almost as campy and cheesy as the original Resident Evil. So to complain about the villain in RE0, you would have to complain about the villains in RE4 and 5 as well. Like, that just, because they are so much worse than Marcus in this game. Like, I don't care what you say about that. That's just how it is. And then the complaint about Billy, like, if you're going to complain about Billy, you're going to complain about the right things to complain about. For example, the problem with Billy into the game is the fact that Billy has more HP and is much more tanky than Rebecca is, so it kind of forces the player to play as Billy pretty much the whole time, as opposed to switching between Rebecca and Billy. And that's the problem with Billy. That's not so much that he's he's not a good character with his story and all that. He's a throwaway character in very much the same sense that Carlos was a throwaway character in the original Resident Evil 3. Like, they're characters that they just bring along to just move the story along for the actual main character that you see in the other games, right? Because we haven't seen Billy. If they brought Billy back in another Resident Evil game, then probably it would feed more into Resident Evil 0. I already have problems with this. I'm sorry.
Honestly, anytime he's on the screen. Resident Evil Operation Raccoon City. Launching during a period when Resident Evil was going through the worst identity crisis of its life,
I get that.
Raccoon City was emblematic of everything that was wrong with the series at the time. Capcom have moved away from the franchise's survival horror roots entirely, and were prepared to forego tradition for the sake of heavy profits as they look to turn Resident Evil into an explosive blockbuster shooter. Operation Raccoon City was one such attempt at doing just that.
Hold on. I gotta pause it again, because his complaints about the game being or feeding into the blockbuster shooter aspect of things, RE4, RE5 did it way before Operation Raccoon City did. Operation Raccoon City, I do agree, deserves a spot on this list, but not really for the same reasons that he's pointing out. For me, the reasons, it was a good concept, but poor execution for a lot of things. And this game actually did a lot of things that was impressive for the time. They remade portions of the RPD, which looked really good, because we didn't have a remake of RE2 yet. And so the closest thing we had for a remake, I guess, would be portions of this game when you get to the RPD. And Umbrella Chronicles and Darkside Chronicles, those are like the closest we get to, like, remaking the RPD or anything, or like getting an RE2 remake type of deal. But I do agree that this belongs on the list.
And it was a spectacular failure. Co-op gameplay is not something Resident Evil was a stranger to. In fact, it attempted it quite successfully in the Outbreak games. But Operation Raccoon City was a straight-up third-person shooter, and a pretty low-budget one at that. The game just was.
I wouldn't consider the Outbreak games to be successful. I would think they'd be more along the lines of like a cult following, right? So, like, for example, you have the Clerks movie, Kevin Smith's like big one-off hit, right? Like, it had such a successful cult following that's how he made his money, and that's how he became famous. The Outbreak games similarly had a cult following. They didn't produce a massive amount of them. They didn't sell a massive amount of those Outbreak games. Like, it was a good concept, and I've said this before, the Outbreak games are a good concept, but they were executed too early. They were executed on a PS2. Now, if the Outbreak games had released on like the PS3 that had, or the PS3 era, so I said PS3 and the Xbox 360, then that would have been a little bit better, because then you would have had the online capabilities that we see today in most games, where back then, for example, on the PS2, I was still running dial-up.
Wasn't fun to play. It was painfully transparent in how it was chasing trends, and most of all, it just wasn't what a Resident Evil game should be.
Actually, Operation Raccoon City is very fun to play. If you haven't played Operation Raccoon City, you should give it a shot. I mean, it's pretty cheap to buy. And then also, like, if you have played it, maybe give it a second playthrough. It's actually very fun to play. It's not that bad. It's not as bad as everybody makes it out to be. The problems with Raccoon City or Operation Raccoon City is the fact that it's non-canon. They do a lot of non-canon things in the game. Very much like, for example, killing Leon as one of the missions. Like that, that's the problem with it. It's not that it's really like a superbly bad game. I can name a couple other Resident Evil games that are much worse than this is. Resident Evil Resistance, for example. I don't think Resistance is a good game at all. It's very boring. It's repetitive. It's nonsense.
It came with a single-player component as well, but that was best left ignored. Operation Raccoon City may not have been billed as a major new entry in the franchise, so it wasn't like people's expectations were sky high to begin with. But even so, it ended up being a major disappointment. Resident Evil 6.
Okay, yeah, this belongs here. This belongs here, hands down. Worst boss designs, man, like for real.
Raccoon City launched, Capcom came out with Resident Evil 6, the absolute lowest point of the franchise.
I would agree.
A symbol of everything that went wrong with it in that era. Doubling down on the action-focused nature of its two predecessors, Resident Evil 6 decided to become even more explosive, even more action-packed, and in doing so, completely betrayed the identity of the series that fans had always held sacred. Does it succeed as an action game? Well, sort of. It's kind of fun to play at times, but by and large, it's an absolute mess of a game. The set pieces are ridiculous. The story is full of bad villains who turn into dinosaurs. Deus Ex Machina twist.
How you not gonna show the dinosaur part, but you mention it? Like, come on. Come on. Also, RE6, and this is no secret for anybody who watches my channel or follows me. RE6 is my least favorite Resident Evil game. I have to, if I want to play RE6, I have to force myself to play RE6. I tried to play RE6 for Resident Evil, a marathon, and I turned it off like after an hour and a half. I couldn't do it. The biggest problem with RE6, or one of the biggest problems with the game, is the fact that they promoted the game as, oh, we're going back to horror, we're going back to our roots for Resident Evil, and they used in the marketing only Leon's campaign. And so that misled a lot of people to buy the game, and RE6 became one of the best-selling Resident Evil games through misguided marketing, and that left a lot of people, myself included, very salty. And the whole game too, it's a very messy game. Like Chris Redfield, they were building up Chris Redfield's story for him to die. He didn't die, and you could clearly tell that in the storytelling, and then the storytelling just kind of changed completely, and Pierce dies instead, and nobody cares if Pierce dies because he wasn't a character that we've had for many years. Like if Chris would have died, then it would have given us a much better story, and we would have been a little bit more shocked with that, and it would have given a better reason to play the game. Also, there's no replayability in this game either. It's not like other games or other Resident Evil games where you have like different side stories or like arranged modes or anything like that. There's no exploration in these games. Or in this game, I say these games, I say 4, 5, and 6. 4 probably has a little bit more exploration, 5 a little bit too, but not to the extent that RE1, 2, 3, 0, Code Veronica had the exploration aspects of it. This one, it was just an on-rail shooter, very linear. The story just takes you where it wants you to go, and that's it.
And reveals involving clones, an off-brand Nemesis knockoff, and more. Resident Evil 6 tried to be the biggest game in the series, but surely it went more than a little overboard. Rather than attempting to temper its ambitions with smart storytelling, subtle writing, and good design, it ended up...
God, I hated the freaking ATVs.
Umbrella Corps.
Oh yeah, this one's bad. Yeah, no.
When it comes to PvP multiplayer. But even in that sorry group, Umbrella Corps is a black sheep. Why? Well, because not only is it a terrible...
Like, it looks like a mobile game.
It's also just a terrible game, period. For starters, a competitive first-person shooter trying to encroach on the Call of Duty and Rainbow Six crowd absolutely does not belong in the Resident Evil series, and I will never understand what compelled Capcom to greenlight this game. That would still have been forgivable if the game itself was fun, which of course, it definitely wasn't. The maps were terribly designed.
This game is bad.
Mechanics were poorly implemented. The general flow of each
Most people don't even know it
was
exists.
worst and boring at best. And all of that combined to result in a game that was so woefully short on active players at launch that even finding a match was an exercise in patience.
At least in Operation Raccoon City, I can find things that kind of redeem it a little bit. This one does nothing of the sorts.
It wouldn't be an exaggeration, in fact, to call Umbrella Corps possibly the worst Resident Evil game ever made. Resident Evil 3.
No.
One thing right out of the way. The Resident Evil 3 remake is not a bad game, not in the slightest. It's a fun, short romp with some cool action horror gameplay. But that's all it is. Devoid of context, that should have been enough. But this game had high expectations to live up to.
Okay, hold on a second. Hold on. All right. I've made it clear that RE3 Remake did disappoint me, but to consider it in the top 5 most disappointing Resident Evil games, no, not even close. And like, I love the original RE3. It's my favorite Resident Evil game. And Resident Evil 3 Remake, when I played it, I was playing it with that mindset, where it's like, okay, you know, I love RE3 Remake, or RE3, because it is my favorite Resident Evil game. So this is a remake of my favorite Resident Evil game. And so going into this game, like, I did feel a little disappointed because that's how I went into the game. But playing through the game over and over again, I mean, I bought this game, man. Okay, so I bought 2 collector's editions on the PS4. I bought it again at Best Buy to get the Steelbook, and I gave that one away. I bought it on Steam. So I bought this game 4 times. And so in the PS4 version and the Steam version combined, I have maybe like 100+ hours into RE3 Remake. That, you don't do that if the game's one of the most disappointing games. There's so many good things about this game. Like, the voice acting is phenomenal. Everybody, myself included, loves Carlos. The hospital section is amazing. Like, oh my god, is it amazing. That is the best part of this game. There are, like I said, there are some disappointing things, like the removal of the clock tower, the Nemesis not killing any STARS members. Like, that was kind of like, why? I did like that they tied in some stuff with RE2 Remake, like the Marvin thing, like how he got bit, you know, like it was Brad who did it, and that was really good. I like that. But I mean, again, this wouldn't even be on top 5 most disappointing. Not even close.
Following hot off the heels of the RE2 remake, RE3 could and should have been a similarly excellent game. But not only did it fail to live up to the standards of its direct predecessor, it also failed to do justice to the original PlayStation 1 classic. Nemesis was, of course, the biggest disappointment. Rather than being a constant menacing threat like Mr. X, but ramped up to 11, he was relegated to fleeting moments of pursuer sections and some boss fights.
I mean, I do agree.
Truncated. Crucial parts from the original game were cut out, most notably the clock tower, while even the parts that were in the game felt a bit too much like they were retreading on what RE2 Remake had done just a year ago. And it was too short, less than 6 hours long, which is never a good thing in a full-priced $60.
That argument is the stupidest argument I've ever heard. Okay, the reason why is because the original RE, you can beat in about 2 hours. RE2, you can beat in about 2 hours. RE3, there's people who speedrun these games. I'm not even joking. There's people who speedrun these original games in like 48 minutes, right? So RE3, you can beat in about 3 hours. To say that, you know, and I joke all the time saying that I can beat RE3 Remake in about an hour, which it's true, but it's a fun hour. Like, that's the thing. It's a fun hour, and you replay it. You know, like, it just it's not a one and done type of game. Yeah, while the story is the same story every single time. There's plenty of things to unlock in the game. And if you want the true experience for RE3 Remake, you got to play on the harder difficulties, which is Nightmare or Inferno. You're going to be in for a real treat, because in the harder difficulties, Nemesis will actually chase you in areas that he doesn't in the normal and easier difficulties. So just, I guess, a little FYI, if you guys haven't done that yet in this. But to say that a full 60 price game, my thing is that this RE3 Remake should have been a DLC for RE2. That's something that I've said many times. And yes, I do agree it should not have released at $60. It should have been a $40 game. But that's not because it's a short game, just because it doesn't feel just overall like a full-length game. Because I don't have a problem playing short games. I don't have a problem at all, playing short games. That's the thing. Like, I run through, like, for example, Resident Evil 7, I run through that in less than 3 hours. Resident Evil 2 Remake, I can beat that in an hour and 48 minutes. So to say that they're short games and that's why they shouldn't cost that much, no. Again, that's why you replay it. That's why there's so many difficulty options, so you can replay it. My other thing is that they should have had mercenaries mode in this, but they did bring that back for RE Village, which is really nice.
Game. Was Resident Evil 3 bad? Well, no, not at all. But was it disappointing? Very.
All right, so here. Very disappointing. My list, okay? My list. Operation Raccoon City, and this is not in a particular order. So Operation Raccoon City, Umbrella Corps, Resident Evil Survivor. Although I do like Resident Evil Survivor, but for other reasons, not because like the gameplay is bad in Resident Evil Survivor. It really is. The voice acting is almost as bad, if not worse, than the original. It's overall, it's not a really good Resident Evil game, but it is at the same time, because it has this. It has the survival horror things to it, and like it fits into the overall lore of Resident Evil, which it does so really nicely. So where was I? Umbrella Corps, not Umbrella Chronicle, Raccoon City, a Survivor. I would put RE6, and I would put, for me, this is for me, I would put RE5 in there. I don't like the direction that they took it from RE4 and on, as far as like going the more action-based shooter aspects of things. RE4 was a good game, but RE4 kind of gets a little boring after a while, because the same rinse and repeat over and over again in the gameplay. RE5, I just don't like RE5. Just overall, like the aesthetics is not pleasing. It was during that whole PS3 brown filter era over games. It was just not a good game to look at, except for Excella. But I mean, that's besides the point. Oh, and Jill. Oh god. Anyways, the best thing about RE5 though was the Lost in Nightmares DLC, which should have been its own game, man. That DLC was so good. It was the best thing of RE5, because overall RE5 to me was a big disappointment. But let me know what your list is down below in the comment section. Sound off, have some fun. Let me know if you agree with my list, if you agree with Gamingbolt's list. I agree with some of the stuff here, but not a lot of stuff. Anyways, I'll see you guys later. Thank you so much for watching. Everybody have a fantastic rest of your day, and peace out.